Hello, everybody. This is Benedict Tchaikovsky, the accounting professor here on YouTube, and I am absolutely stoked today to have Jeff Elliott with us. Jeff is the ninja that was not in a 1980s canon film, if you know what that reference is, but he is the ninja, and we're here just to kind of go through and talk about Ninja CPA review. Jeff, great to meet you virtually here from Kansas. I'm here in Huntington Beach and you're out there in Kansas City. It's great to meet, or excuse me, somewhere in Kansas.
Yeah, somewhere out here in the middle of a pasture in Kansas. Yeah. It's great to finally connect with you over video after
Yeah,
emailing back and forth. So
that's absolutely awesome. So really the reason why we're doing this meeting here today is really because I've had multiple students that are using other CPA review products, and inevitably what happens is they take, we're just using FAR as an example, but they take the FAR portion of the CPA exam. As we all know, the CPA exam dramatically changed on January 1st, 2024. FAR became significantly more challenging, or it really just kind of changed itself up. And, you know, when we kind of look at the importance of CPA exam preparation, you do want to invest in a CPA review course. I can tell you right now that the classes I teach my students, are they great for learning accounting? The answer is absolutely yes. However, when it comes to preparing for and taking the CPA exam, you absolutely want to use a CPA review course. Not to do that is just making a huge mistake. And let's like, so Ninja is really unique from the perspective of you have not necessarily a course purchase model, but it's really a subscription model, right? So if I want to try, or if I want to, if I'm a Becker student and I want to use Ninja, I can basically just say, okay, I want to subscribe to Ninja, and what are your current rates each month?
yeah, we changed it. So yeah, we have a subscription model. It's kind of like Netflix for the CPA exam. So
Sure.
you can start and stop whenever you want, and and it's not like financing a course. So there's no commitment, just your first month. And so um, back in back in January of this year, we switched to a supplement model and a full course model. So
Okay.
with a supplement, because people who only want a supplement, when you give them like 7 or 8 study tools, it's overwhelming. So
Right.
with the supplement, we took our 3 most popular products, which is the MCQ, the audio, and the notes. So the
Okay.
supplement is $67 a month. Then the full course is $87 a month, and you can, like I said, you can cancel at any time.
Okay, cool. And then I can also, if I want, I can get like basically I can sign up for a week trial and try out the course, right? Or is it
Yep.
a
Yep.
trial?
Yep. We have a free trial. Yep.
Okay, cool. And I'll put that link below in the video. So anybody out there who wants to go through and do the trial, um, please feel free to go through and check this out. So in terms of for Ninja and Audit, you've been doing and working with CPA review since about, I think you mentioned it was about 2008 is
Yeah.
when.
2008 is when I started another71.com. Um, it was never intended to be a business. It was just a blog about failing the CPA exam.
Wait,
And
it's called another 71.
yeah,
Oh my
another71.com.
God. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
so actually, so let's back up for a second. What was your exam journey like? Like, what was your like when you took, so when you took the CPA exam, was it like under FAR, Reg, Audit, and BEC? Is that the way it was
Yes.
structured? Okay.
Yeah. I started in 2005.
Okay.
Yeah. And my study plan consisted of um, work, come home, play Madden on PlayStation, go take the exam, fail, wonder why I failed, and then repeat. And that's what I did for for about 2 years. And then my wife was like, let's either do it or don't. And so then I got my button gear and started studying. And then along the way, I developed what I called the Ninja framework, and It's just a different way. It's in some ways it's kind of polar opposite what the other courses teach you to do. And so the Ninja framework became Ninja CPA review, um, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
Wait, so what was it when you were getting the 70, when you were getting the 70? I, you see, when I took it, like I'm old man Bennett, right? I took it, you had to take it in person. It was 19 and a half hours over 3 days. It was practice part one and two, which were 4.5 hours each, then theory, which was 3.5, audit and law, which were each 3.5 hours. And that was absolutely like insane. But I think when I was going through, you either got like when you didn't pass, I think you either got a 69 or a 75. And if you were in like that middle twilight zone ground, they were looking at you for potential like regrades. So you were going through though, and when you were taking it, you were scoring like a 71 on the another 71. Like how many times did you get that 71 score?
I forget it was several, but it's on. I have I so I'm like the only I guess mainstream, if you want to call it that, mainstream review course person who lists their failing scores in their bio.
Wow, that's crazy,
It's
man.
probably not good for business. Yeah, it was several, and I scored back-to-back 74s on regulation, which caused me to lose my FAR credit. So I actually passed FAR twice.
Wow.
And so yeah, I failed BEC, and then I did what any normal person would do. I failed with the 71. I did what any normal person would do. They would make a blog about failing BEC, and this is
Okay.
pre-social media,
Right.
and so it was like the place to. I mean, I had some blog post that had like 3,000 comments on it, um, and so that's yeah. Back in the day, another 71 was kind of the Reddit of CPA of the CPA world.
Wow.
Um, yeah.
And so what helped you, so just kind of like what helped you go from 71, 74? What helped you get passing scores on all four parts? Like what was it that kind of, what was it that flipped for you that helped you get to that passing score?
Well, for one thing, I decided I decided that I actually did want to be a CPA. Um, and so maybe I should like do what that requires, which is sacrifice and study. And so I did that, um, and then the Ninja framework is essentially it's centered around taking notes, working multiple choice questions, and rewriting your notes. So it's a very note centered approach. Um, that was very helpful. And
And by
then
the way, when you talk about that, and there's also I know there's been studies, and my students think I'm trying to give them carpal tunnels and that I'm going to get sued for it. But the way that I want my students to learn accounting is to take out basically pencil and paper or pen and paper and like copy out the questions multiple times through. And is that kind of what you try to, or either like handwrite out the notes? Is that kind of what you advocate? Because I know that there have been studies that have shown that if you are in fact taking pencil to paper, it's significantly more powerful than just like, oh, I'm just going to take a tablet and write it out. Like, what are your thoughts on like that process of learning?
um, yeah, exactly. So the Ninja framework, the N is nail the concepts. So I want people to watch all their videos or sorry.
That's me.
All
I wanted to just spotlight your video, but go for it. I wanted we can I'll go back to the other screen in just a second. But just
oh,
go.
okay.
But yeah, yeah. That's me.
Um, so people the way that the other courses teach is watch video one, do question set one, watch video two, do question set two. And the problem with that is by the time that you get to like week 7 or week 8, you have forgotten what you did in week one. And so then you have to do it all over again. And it's a very inefficient, and the pass rates show that it's a very ineffective way of studying. So, the pass rate for any given section is about 50%. And uh, I hate to say it, but you look at all the pass rate marketing in the review courses. Well, these people that are all passing at 50%, what course are they using? Because everyone else is advertising higher rates. Well, um, it's a pretty inefficient and ineffective way of studying. So what I did was I say, assume that you're going to study for 7, 8 weeks max. I never advocate for someone to study more than 8 weeks for an exam because you get diminishing returns. You get people who study for 3 months and they can't figure out why they scored a 65. It's because over time you forget. When you study for the CPA exam is a different beast. You want to cram a bunch of info in your head and go in and barf it out on exam day. And you can be an expert in whatever field you work in later on. You can be an expert at governmental accounting if that's what you work in. But if you're not working in governmental accounting, you just got to cram it in your head and barf it out on exam day. And so what I advocate is nail the concepts. So take 2 weeks watching your videos, or if you're doing self-study, take 2 weeks reading the book. Then after 2 weeks, it's done. And take notes, take really good notes. But after 2 weeks, you're done. Then you move on to MCQ. So nail the concepts and then take intense notes, NI, while you're doing it. And then the N is nonstop MCQ. Then you take 2 weeks and do MCQ. And um, uh, each multiple choice question has, some of them has four different learning opportunities. Why one is correct, why the others are incorrect. And so, to your point about getting carpal tunnel, I advocate taking a legal pad, drawing a line down the middle, and making little bullet points. And I also like people to do topic specific multiple choice questions versus random. So like you can hit an area, you can hit like inventory. You can make a really cool set of notes over inventory, and as you go along and um, and miss a question, or you might miss it later, whatever I call it the little fact nugget, uh, whatever the little fact nugget is, write it down. And so you've nailed the concepts, intense notes, nonstop multiple choice questions. So you're really at week 4 now. And then NINJ is just rewrite your notes. So all of your nail the concepts notes, all of your nonstop multiple choice questions notes, you have like pages and pages of legal pad writing. Then take those long form scribbles and put them into shorthand like review notes. And like you said, there's something about connecting the material from your hand to your brain versus,
Absolutely.
you know, some courses advocate highlighting, and I tell people to throw their highlighters in the trash. Like I say, friends don't let friends highlight. Uh, and uh, and so take a week rewriting your notes, and that sounds like a long time, but I believe that pays dividends on exam day. So then you're at like 6 weeks. Um, no, yeah, like 5 or 6 weeks. Actually, 2 weeks nail the concepts, 3 weeks MCQ, and then week 6 rewrite your notes, and then week 7 is the A. It all comes together in a final review. You're reviewing your notes. You're hitting your week MCQ from weakest to strongest, and then you're exam ready. And I think I lost track of your original question.
No, no, Jeff, no, actually, you brought up a couple really crazy things that I've been telling my students. One of them, so when I went through and took the exam, about 2 weeks before the test, and I've been studying from like January through April, right, which is well beyond those 8 weeks. But when I was studying for all 4 parts at once, about 2 weeks before the exam, I started missing questions on the multiple choice. And what happened was, I think you can literally, to your point, you can start like psyching yourself out. There are diminishing returns. And so at that point, I basically just said, okay, just read. Don't do anything else, but just like read, like when I'm advising students. So it almost kind of sounds like that there can definitely be overstudying if if you spend too much time studying, that all this starts kind of getting jumbled up. So do you actually recommend that about a week before, like, so just depending on people, so if they have more time to study, would you say, okay, a week before the exam, you're going to stop doing multiple choice questions or practicing, because if you do them, and you start missing them, that's going to do more damage to your psyche when you're heading into the exam than anything else.
I actually, so a week before your exam, you're reviewing notes, hitting MCQ. I actually want people to hit their problem multiple choice areas up until an hour before they have to leave for the testing center. So
Yeah.
I like people to take 1 p.m. exams. You study the night before until 10 o'clock, get a good night's sleep, get up at 6, and you just hammer MCQ. And like those 4 or 5 hours right there could make the difference between a 74 and a 75. So
Right.
like if you're weak in an area, just embrace it and go in and try to get something, try to salvage something from that weak area to where on exam day you're like, oh man, I don't remember anything about this one aspect of leases, but I know it's one of these two answers. And so it gives yourself a fighting chance.
Right.
Yeah.
And then in terms of like, okay, so and then also, do you also recommend for students is like what I always kind of tell them is like, hey, look, you don't want to be cooped up in your room all day. And I actually, when I've given advice to students, like one student, so Bennett, you gave me the best advice in terms of passing the exam. I said, well, what did I say? And she said, well, you told me to go on hikes, go on walks. I mean, like, how do you like what kind of recommendations do you give for students to exercise and being in your top physical shape? What do you generally recommend for students to do as they're basically preparing for this test? Like eating well, like how do you suggest like aside from
Yep.
just doing the exam, like how do you need to be like in top, being in top physical condition? What do you kind of how do you like what kind of advice do you dispense for students on that front?
Well, the average tenure of an exam candidate, it was 17 according to NASBA. Last time I looked, several years back actually, it was 17 months. I'm not quite sure what it is now, but like you can't just give up on your health. You can't just
Right.
pound Mountain Dew and eat gummy bears. Um, you, I would say if if you're used to going to the gym, keep doing that. Maybe instead of 5 days a week, maybe 3 days a week. Like you still have to have that outlet. You still have to, if you have relationships, invest in those relationships. If you have kids, you have to keep
Sure.
being a father or a mother. Life still goes on. You still have to do those healthy things. You have to really cut back on some of the other just goof off times, or just be really intentional with your goof off time. But if if especially if someone is studying full time and they're in their apartment or their house, I recommend that people leave the house every day and go to like a coffee shop or the library and like treat it like a job, because you want to have like a mental separation between home life, goof off life, chill life, and work. That's especially important for people who are studying full time. Um, and then at your house, either have a room or a corner of the room, or like a coffee table, like a small little table in the corner of the room, and like the only thing that you do there is study. You don't look at Facebook, you don't do anything else, you only study there. And that also helps separate, okay, when I sit here I study, when I'm in the living room I can do whatever. And so you still have to do the healthy things, and you have to, when it's study time, it's study time. And there's other little hacks you can do, like you can listen to an audio course or whatever when you're at the gym. Um, but you still have to maintain your healthy behaviors.
And it's just kind of another side. Like, so this is really helpful. I mean, I think the people that are watching this are going to hopefully get something out of it. The other part I have is I'm seeing a lot of students that are obviously, given the nature of the economy right now, layoffs, everything else, people are kind of going back. They said, okay, I was just talking to somebody who I worked with previously. She basically, I think she has enough units to basically sit for the CPA exam, but it's been probably a good solid 10 years since she's
Mm.
basically taken her accounting classes. What do you recommend to those students that are coming back and they're basically saying, okay, I want to reactivate and relearn my accounting education? Obviously a lot of things have stayed the same, but there's obviously things that have changed since, the time if you were learning accounting back then. But what do you recommend to students? Like, is it going through and I generally don't tell students to go get like a normal accounting textbook and learn that way, just because I don't think that there's going to be a lot of value because that's purely like academic. But what do you recommend to a student who's saying, okay, it's been a while. How do I get back myself in? Because I want to take this CPA exam to kind of go through and break through and really go through and study. What would be the best thing for me to kind of like, how could I make that happen?
Well, again, according to NASBA, like the average age of a CPA candidate is 29.
Okay.
And so, that's 5 or 6 years out of school. So if you're 10 years out of school, like what's the difference between 5 years and 10 years out of school? And I've always said that, and some people have disagreed with me, that if you know the difference between a debit and a credit, then you can take a review course and pass the CPA exam.
Hmm.
Now, it might mean that you need to study more. It might mean that you need to watch a video twice, or maybe lease accounting just isn't as fresh as it was, and so you need to do more multiple choice questions. But to your point about taking a an accounting refresher, I agree. I don't think that's necessary. I think you just dive in, um, and over time, as you do more multiple choice questions, your scores will go from 45 to 55 to 65 to 75, and you'll just get better. So
And what else, and this is also again, like on this same front is like a lot of the way I generally recommend students to take if they are in school and they're taking classes. I generally recommend a year of intermediate accounting because that's going to basically cover most all like the topics on FAR. And the other part of that as well is like, what I tell students is like, well, like you may not need to take a government class because a lot of schools don't offer them, and you can basically use CPA review to kind of learn governmental accounting. But say if I don't take an intermediate accounting class, and then I'm getting in. And what I tell students is like, well, you want it to be CPA review, not CPA brand new. What type of, courses do you recommend students to have taken heading into basically prior to their CPA review? Like, what is the best type of education that they can have coming into a CPA review course academically?
like when I went back for my 150 hours, so I graduated with my bachelor's, then I went to work for a small CPA firm, and then I took my GMAT and went back to school. I went to night school, and so I started taking some master's classes. And yeah, I took an advanced accounting class. Um, the best the best class I ever took, I believe, which helped me. Um, I think it actually helped. So regulation was my highest score, and um,
What'd you score on reg?
92.
Nice, dude. That's awesome. My highest on practice, I got an 84. That was my highest score ever.
Yeah, I went 74, 74, 92. So, uh, it was definitely an outlier. Um, I really believe so. When I took that master's, that whatever it was, advanced tax two or whatever it was in master at the master's levels, like that's when tax like clicked for me for the first time.
Yeah.
And so tax has always just clicked better for me. Yeah, I scored 92 on regulation, but 76 on FAR. So, don't be it was an outlier. Uh, you only need a 75. Um, and so yeah, intermediate accounting. I think governmental accounting is helpful because it's such a backwards way of thinking about
Fund
accounting.
accounting. It was like, to
It,
your point, I like memorized that crap and barfed it. And I barged it in May of 1991. And
Yeah.
whenever I go back to it, it's like, oh my God, really?
Yeah, I think governmental accounting, like so that when you go through the CPA review, it's not like a foreign language. I think governmental accounting and advanced tax. So yeah, that's and just with the educational requirements to take the CPA exam, most of those courses are required anyway by
Right.
most state boards of accountancy, I would imagine.
Yeah. So California, we're probably the most liberal in terms of what classes we need to take. And so that's much more, but we are though, I think with the whole change, the reversion back to 120 semester units and then 2 years of experience in my discussions with different people, I think that we're probably going to head towards some sort of a certificate, which would include courses like intermediate and audit and tax. And I think, by the way, to your point, when I took tax as an undergraduate student, I had no idea what was going on, but it wasn't until I had like 2 years of audit experience and then I'm sitting in law school. So that kind of that distance. And then I'm saying, oh, this is what they were talking about. You almost need like practical business experience to kind of really understand how tax works, as well as I think maybe even to a certain extent audit. You just kind of need like that real experience. So I
Yep.
that's my own that's my own thoughts and an opinion on that. So yeah, it's crazy. So cool. Let's go through and just kind of take a look over here at Ninja. Okay, so and I think one of the things too is that, and I just wanted to kind of just ask you about this, is when so you've been doing this since 2008. And obviously, one of the biggest exam changes, and there have been some over the years, but one of the biggest ones was like January 1st, 2024. Um, and when they went, they basically got rid of BEC and they changed it to BAR, TCP, and ISC. What changes did you have to go through in your review course? Basically, what updates did you have to do to basically make it like what it is today? Like what kind of okay, I'm going to go back and just like look at the new blueprint for the CPA exam and we're going to rebuild this based on that. Like what kind of changes did you make to your course once that new blueprint came out?
Yeah. Well, first I have to give credit to Ninja Mike. So anyone who has used Ninja, they know of Ninja Mike. And uh, he's amazing. He does all of our tutoring. I think he's the only top five review instructor that teaches all six subjects.
Wow.
And yeah, super good dude. So we got together. We were probably a little late to the game. Um, I'm naturally a procrastinator. I'm like, oh, I really don't want to do that. I think I'll just ignore it. Um, so we started on it, I think June, May or June of 2023. And thankfully, with the new exam, so with exam changes, you have structural changes, and then you also have like a major pronouncement that they're like the revenue recognition standard that came out several years ago. That was a
Sure.
big one. Like all of our revenue questions had to be rewritten. That was a big one. TCJA in 2017 was a big one for tax. Thankfully, with the 2024 changes, we didn't really have that, and so what we had to do was go through, okay, BEC is going away. What parts of BEC are going to audit? What parts are going to bar? What parts are going to ISC? So it was really a reshuffling of the content. Now for ISC and TCP, um, so like for TCP, there's obviously some regulation questions that transferred over, but there's some concepts that are tested in TCP that are more advanced tax questions that were not within the scope of the CPA exam previously. And then we also didn't have, uh, so every year the AICPA releases the released questions to the providers. we didn't have AICPA release questions for ISC and TCP to use as a guide, especially for TCP, or sorry, for ISC. So we had to, okay, like all, we basically had to write them from scratch. And then, and then you're kind of holding your breath as the results come out, like,
Sure.
oh no. Uh, uh, and so it was really a reshuffling of the content. And we thankfully most of our students were gracious. Like I think that's one of the cool things is that people realize that we are trying to help them pass the CPA exam without like breaking the bank or they have to take out a loan. And so I think people are more gracious towards us. So like, hey, you have this listed in this like you have this listed in reg. I think it's actually a better section, better for TCP. Or hey, this is you have this in TCP. I think this is in reg. Actually, reg and TCP was the biggest when we were trying to correct the content.
Right. By
It's
the way, everybody, we just want to let you know that I will have students vaguely share with me about what goes on the CPA exam, and I absolutely will not disclose that. But you cannot talk about things that are on the CPA exam to anyone if you reveal questions or you post things. And I always cringe when I go onto some Facebook group and I'll see people say, "Oh, what was on the exam?" And if you're posting on that, that is a huge no-no. Right.
yeah,
It's a very, you never, ever, ever want to do that. So I'm just gonna put that out there. It's like, obviously, it's a little bit different, just saying like just general guidance, but you're not, we're not taking the exam. We're trying to help people pass, but it's like, yeah, it's crazy.
yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, I take the AICPA code of conduct like super serious. And so when someone email people actually don't do that too often. I think they're smarter than that. They don't but when they inevitably they'll ask me a question asking for help over a topic and divulging exam information. And usually I don't even answer the question. Like I don't even go near there. But what I'm talking about is when they're studying and they're looking at the question and there's a lot of people who have studied the blueprint, which is cool. And they're like,
Right.
hey, I don't think you guys categorize this correctly
Yeah, yeah,
in
yeah, yeah, exactly.
in the blueprint. Yeah. Um, yeah, for those of you who are posting on Facebook and Reddit about
Don't
exam
do it.
content, you shouldn't you shouldn't do it.
Don't do it. No, no,
Um,
it's like honestly, like the one thing I would say is being a licensed California attorney and also a licensed California CPA. The CPA or California Board of Accountancy does not mess around. I mean, you will lose
no.
your license in about 5 seconds. Now, California Bar, well, you look at like Avenatti and look at some of these other clowns. I mean, you got to do some pretty bad stuff to finally get disbarred. It is a pretty, but for the CPA, it's like, nope, we're gonna take away that license in about 60 seconds. I mean, it's really that's it. So it's something to kind of keep in mind. But the other thing I meant to ask you was, I think students make a mistake of looking at, say, oh, TCP has a 70% pass rate. I
Yep.
should take TCP. But what they don't realize is that those that have been working in tax, I don't know what your experience has been in this, Jeff, but I've had students who've been working in tax, like doing individual business returns for several years. They're the ones who have that practical experience, really good experience, are going into TCP and they're saying, oh my God, this is like totally easy because I've been doing this professionally. If you were to kind of say, like, my advice for most students is that if they're directly graduating from school, is you're much better off taking bar just because business analysis and reporting, it's much more general as opposed to like TCP or ISC. What are your thoughts on that advice that I'm giving to students? Is that consistent with what you've seen, or am I giving bad advice to my students?
Well, I'm not going to say that you're giving bad advice. I just um, my personal view is that, like I said earlier, pass the exam and then go on and be an expert in whatever. Because
Sure.
when you're a licensed CPA, you are held to a standard like you must be a competent professional and and the bar's pretty high. And so you have to go be an expert in whatever you're holding yourself out as, whatever area you're serving clients in. And so, what is bar? It's the areas of FAR and BEC that we all hated. It's the more higher level governmental accounting concepts. It's financial analysis. It's cost accounting, and so it doesn't shock me that bar has a 40s pass rate. And so what is TCP? It's tax without business law.
Hmm,
So business law brings down reg scores, I believe.
hmm,
But reg is still has a 50 or 60% pass rate. And so it makes sense to me that TCP is higher because, it's, tax is tax. And um, so it doesn't have that weight of business law. And so I rec I recommend use the uh, FART FART um, FAR auditing regulation TCP.
okay, wow. That's cool. Hey man,
That's
I totally like look, I mean, I think I'm more kind of scared of tax just because it's like I just that particular I think it goes back to when I was an undergraduate student and I just didn't understand it until later with more experience. And then also just when I'm talking to students about like, okay, like and the ones that I've seen pass it are more of like that they've been working in the field for so long, and that's why I'm kind of more afraid to recommend it to students. But no, that means, by the way, have you seen anybody who's done like ISC or like how's that one? What's that passage rate?
yeah. I so uh, in 2024, the exams with the three highest pass rates were regulation, which is still part of core,
Right.
ISC, and TCP.
Wow.
And there's two. I mean, there's two schools of thought. With you recommending bar, that's probably the best path for someone who wants to take the CPA exam and come out as a better accountant, a
Mhm,
better CPA. There's a strong case to be made for that.
mhm.
For someone who just wants to get the exam over with and take what I would consider the path of least resistance, I would say uh, take TCP. So
Okay.
it's it's two ways of looking at it. If I were taking the exam today, I would take TCP.
Okay. Cool. Hey man, that's why I'm so happy we've spoken about this because I need to rephrase my advice. So this is awesome. So let's go through and just so I've logged into my Ninja account and this is basically the first thing I'm going through and seeing. So what do you so if where would if I'm brand new to so actually let's say this if I'm at using say Becker or another review course where would I, if I want to kind of go through and start practicing task-based simulation questions, where would I want to start in on Ninja?
You would start in the MCQ. One thing I want to point out real quick.
Sure.
You see that little at the bottom right corner, that little dialog box.
Mhm.
Yep, you can click that. So that's
Sensei.
Sensei. And so ask it a FAR question.
Just ask a far question or like,
Just yeah. Ask it a question that you think is relevant to financial accounting.
so how do I determine the allowance for doubtful accounts? Ah, okay. Wow. That's awesome. And this is AI generative, right? This is all coming from AI, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, but it's a closed system, and so the only so it only knows the Ninja materials.
Right, and just to everybody, I have like four AI bots that I have that you can access through my YouTube channel, and I've kind of directed it to try to basically stay within the materials that I've posted. And when you're using AI, that's actually something that's just incredibly important, or you can go through and start hallucinating. And so this is, and when I spoke with Jeff, when we've spoken about this, you're just using the Ninja materials to go through and to create this. You're not using like other outside materials. So this
Correct.
is a closed system. Okay, that's awesome. Cool. Okay, so and then
Yeah.
let's see. Can I ask it, how do I access task-based simulations using Ninja? Oh, MCQ. So this is literally how you do it. Okay. It's telling me what to do right here. This is awesome.
I was kind of sweating there. I wasn't sure if it would know the answer.
All right. So
Yep.
right over here. So launch MCQ. Okay, perfect. So this is all, oh, awesome. Okay. So, okay.
Yep. So I would go up to Sims and click by topic.
Okay. So I can
And
go
then
to,
over on the right, yeah. You can,
okay, let's see how, okay. I think they got rid of the direct method, didn't they? For cash flows on the CPA exam.
yes, except they still they still test it a little bit on not-for-profit accounting. So
Okay.
it's still it's still testable in one part of the blueprint. And so we've just we have we have we've left it in there because I think it's helpful for the CPA candidates, even though it might create some doubt about the product. But
Right.
yeah,
Okay. Oh, this is cool. So awesome. Okay, so basically, as going through and you, so really to kind of go through and you, so I can basically, these are all the different simulations. And then, so do you recommend, this is obviously, I can basically open up Excel, and I don't know if this is actually being shown on, but there is a Excel worksheet that I can essentially go through over here and use. I'm going to try to find a way to share my entire screen so everybody can see it. But if I change this over here to, um, right, so as you can see from my screen, it's like if you just click on like this little Excel file here. Now, do you recommend, if as you're going through and working through these task-based simulations, do you think it's a kind of a better approach to just use pencil and paper to kind of go through and solve these, or how would you recommend doing this part?
yeah, I would use a
Oh, pen.
calculator
Okay.
and a pen and paper.
Right.
um, with simulations, opinions vary. I think that either a week before your exam or the weekend before your exam, I would hammer 8 to 10 simulations because you can study 30 simulations and, and well, maybe not. You can you can study a bunch of simulations and get none of those topics on exam day. And so your ability to answer the simulation questions are built upon the concepts that you have to learn for the MCQ anyway.
Right.
And so it's just another way to answer the conceptual questions. And so, um, like for instance, on exam day, when I was taking the exam, I got a topic that I knew really well, but I could not figure out how to answer the simulation about that topic. And I sat there and just stared at it. Like I just couldn't figure out what they wanted me to do. And so it's important to understand the concepts, but then also how to navigate the simulations. I also recommend that people do the AI CPA sample test. It's like whatever, just a few multiple choice questions and a few sims or whatever. It just kind of gives you a feel for how the real exam works.
Right.
Um, you know, our our simulations are good enough, but it's not our strong suit. There are other courses who just programmatically um, emulate the real exam day experience a little bit better, in my opinion. I think that our adaptive learning and our training score is among the best out there. But simulations, good enough, but not perfect.
By the way, when you, and I don't know what your experience was like, so when I took the CPA exam, I was taking the second part of practice, which was, it was like 60 multiple choice questions, and then it was basically four problem-based questions. And when I went there, I got through the first 20 multiple choice questions fine, but when I got to question 21, I had never seen it before. I was like going, what is this? And I got to question 22. I didn't know this. And instead of getting overwhelmed, I basically just skipped those questions. I went back to do the more problem-based questions. I re-reviewed the first 20 multiple choice. And then when I was looking at those 40 questions, which I had really no idea on because they were what the CPA exam will sometimes do is they'll put questions that you'll never see.
Yep.
And that's really if you've gone through and if you've done all the review questions that are through Ninja or whatever review course you're doing, if you're literally seeing things that you've never seen before, that's usually going to be a pretty significant indicator that there's something going on or that basically that the AICPA or now they're basically creating new quote unquote test type questions. When a student is going or when a candidate is going through and taking the exam, do you recommend that candidate to basically kind of skip around the questions and flag them? If you see something, you don't want to spend 20 minutes on it on a multiple choice question. Rather, you need to kind of be moving forward as quickly as possible. So when it comes to taking the exams, do you agree with like that strategy is like if you see a question, it's like, oh my God, I've never seen this one before. I'm going to skip it and come back to it. Or what's your thought on that front in terms of when you're actually taking the exam on test day?
Yeah, from my own experience, I would I start the exam and then I get to question five and then I can't. It's you have to calculate something, and I couldn't get any of the numbers to come out, and it's really easy to freak out and get
Yeah.
OCD on it and sit there for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's because you are so scared of getting that question wrong that um, because it might cause you to fail, that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because you spent too much time on that question, then you don't have enough time to spend on the task-based simulations, and then you do fail because of
Right.
that question. And so what I recommend is figure out what your time budget is. So each exam has a different number of questions, and figure out what your time budget is, and then once you've passed that time budget per question, whether it's 3 or 4 minutes, whatever it is, then I would choose B or C. That's one time I did 100 questions. I did 100 questions just to see what the actual answers were, and it was like 60-40 uh, B or C, and so I did. So I would choose B or C or whatever answer looks best. I would flag it and then move on. And
Yeah.
then um and then once you get to the end of that testlet, I think see, I haven't actually taken the real exam in a long time. I
Right.
think they still have like a couple of testlets.
Correct.
Um before you move on to the next testlet, look at your time. And if you're doing well on time, then go back to that one and spend another 1 or 2 minutes and then fix it, or just say, you know what, I'm just gonna call it good and move on. I would recommend not going back, because you might need that extra 1 or 2 minutes. Like maybe you're up against it, you have a minute left, and you're on your last sim, and you just need to click check marks or click boxes, enter answers, enter zeros, just answer. Um, because on most of my exams, I ran out of time.
Yeah.
Auditing is the only one that I ever left early on, and I almost felt like something was wrong. Um, and and so um, yeah, there are people who are prepared for the exam but fail because of how they interact with the exam on exam day, and you cannot make that mistake.
So do you think it's better to like skip around like and build your confidence with questions you know the answers to immediately and then come back to just like basically flag them? I mean, do you recommend that as a strategy or like obviously we don't want to spend too much time on just one question, but do you kind of recommend like because maybe by going through and doing the rest of the questions you can say, oh, like that's what that question was trying to ask if it's kind of like in the back of my mind and I'm more thinking about it. Is that, do you think that's a good strategy to do, or do you think that everybody should just kind of have their own, or what would you recommend?
If I were taking the exam today, I would just do it linear. I would
Okay.
just 5, 6, 7, 8, and I would just do it that way, and it's probably more efficient because you're going to answer them all anyway.
Right.
And I would just stick with your time budget. And if you answer one question in a minute, then whatever your time budget is, then you know. I'm 47 and my voice still cracks. Uh,
No worries, man. I've got you beat.
um, and so like if you save a minute or two on question three, then maybe you can allocate that extra minute or two to that question five that you're struggling on. But I would just do them linear. But
Okay, cool. Awesome. Okay, so the FAR audio, this is really something that, and obviously you have all these are available like on mobile apps, right? So I can basically, if I'm running around, I can kind of go through and like listen in as I'm like on the go, correct?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah, you can listen to them in the browser, or I recommend people download them and like listen to them on, Apple Music or whatever.
okay,
Download them to your device.
okay.
Um,
And let me just pull up something over here. So let's see here.
SEC reporting requirements. In this session, we are going to discuss the
who's
securities.
that guy?
Is this a Jeff or a Mike? It's got to be a Jeff.
No, all of the audio is me because
Okay.
because because Mike's Indian, he has a thick accent.
Okay.
Yeah. I've always done the audio. The audio has been around since 2012.
Cool.
I've always done the audio, um, and I'm an audio learner, so that's how I
Yeah.
best consume books. And
Cool.
so I recorded the audio with that in mind.
I already know what it's like to be listening to my old audio recordings. That's why I skipped out of it because of the cringe.
Thank you, thank
It
you. You
feels
had
no.
mercy.
I know what it feels like.
You
The,
had
the
mercy.
the funniest thing though is when there's other instructors that use my materials at Irvine Valley, and I'll walk into their class like if they're sick or something, and they hear me talking, and they're all like, "Is that you? Is that the guy?" Or like that's always it's always the funniest part. So.
Yep.
All right, so let's take a look at these notes. Okay, so this is okay. Okay, so if I come over here, like, and this is really where you recommend that you sit down and really kind of like go through, and it's like basically it's going through and copying through these notes that are kind of over here. Like, so you would want to take out that yellow legal pad and basically copy these parts down, right?
Well, there's two paths. probably the best path is for people to take their own notes
Okay.
and then use this as a review guide. So
So take the notes from like the audio lectures or to take the notes from.
from the Ninja book, or if they're using like let's say Becker, the Becker lectures to take their own notes from the Becker lectures, or if they're going Ninja only, then take the notes from the Ninja book. Um, One of the things that we did in 2024 was we actually redid the audio and redid the notes because before the book and the notes there wasn't overlap, so it wasn't a cohesive um, product. And the the notes um, and the audio went together, but but it was different than the book because the notes and the audio came first, and then the book came about in 2015 or 2016. Um, and so in 2024, we redid the notes and we redid the audio. So recording the audio is my least favorite thing to do because like when my voice crack when my voice cracks, I have to redo it. Um, and so uh, the notes now it's kind of like the 80/20 rule. So 80% of the book, 80% of the concepts is in 20% of the material. And so that was kind of my mindset with the notes. So the notes are a stripped down version of the book, and then
Okay.
the audio correlates to um, well, actually the audio relates to the book and the notes.
And by the so if I'm going through for the FAR book, like this is just it's essentially an ebook, right? So this is going to essentially be my ebook that I can essentially go through over here. And if I want to read up on SEC reporting requirements, and then I'm kind of going through over here and I can essentially look at this right over here. And then this is going to give me a much more detailed version of basically compare this over to the notes, right? But this is really what I should be going through and reading and then taking my own notes on. And perhaps
Yeah,
also supplementing with, so are the audio files, is that you reading this text or is that a little bit different? Or is it more of kind of like you giving like a summary of what's in these different chapters?
the the audio is a summary of the Ninja book,
Okay.
but I use the Ninja notes as a guide to strip out what's non-essential.
Okay.
And some of it doesn't really lend itself to an audio, like if you're
Sure.
walking through an amortization table or something.
Okay.
But the audio is based on the book using the filter of the notes.
And then looking over, and then you mentioned, or I think you may have mentioned about, and this is live tutoring. So if I wanted to set up basically a live tutoring session, how does this like usually work? Like what's usually like the cost of doing a live tutoring session? Like how does this generally work? If there was a subject I was really struggling with, how could I connect with Ninja Mike? Or like what's involved with doing that?
Yeah. So so our Ninja sparring videos is Ninja Mike walking through it was the recordings of the live session where Mike, we good?
Yeah.
Um where Ninja Mike walks through all of the concepts through Excel. So
Okay.
he teaches through Excel, and it was the live sessions. And so all of those, so any topic you want, we have a sparring recording of it. And so since all of those sessions are recorded, people can go back and watch all of those sessions, and then every
Oh,
Saturday. Yep,
okay.
sparring replays. Yep. And then every Saturday morning, Mike is there live to answer any question over any exam. And so anyone can be like, "Hey, can you walk me through the balance sheet? Or I have a question about the balance sheet, or anything like that. And so it's really an office hours type of deal.
Oh,
And
so that's basically included in the cost of the monthly
yeah,
cost.
yeah.
Oh,
So
okay. So it's not like, oh, I have to hire a separate tutor to
nope,
teach me. Oh,
no,
okay.
nope. And even when we were doing the live sessions, um, we never charged for it. It was we always included it in the package. That's just
Sorry, I'm just doing a little preview on this. I
yep.
love the music, man. It's awesome.
Income as at your amortization.
That's awesome. No, I mean, honestly, I like most of my videos on YouTube, whenever I'm going through problems, can consist of me little screen just using like Excel. But I
Yep.
think students appreciate that though, because it's like if you're going through and kind of showing them all the different, stuff, I mean, like that's really what you want. Okay. Wow. So these are also flashcards as well. Okay.
Yeah, the flashcards are kind of cool. It uses spaced repetition. I'm sure that's probably a, I don't know, common technology, but um,
Okay. Wow. This is cool. Wow. Okay. There are a lot of wow. This I like how this is set up. And then okay, so these are replays. And what are the cram sessions?
yeah. So the sparring, is like everything
Yeah.
within the scope of the CPA exam about a topic, and then the
Right.
cram is like the 80/20 of that topic.
Okay. Cool.
And so if someone just needs, so people would use sparring to learn the concepts, they would use cram to review a weak area.
Awesome. Okay. And then the Ninja Sensei is really what I was asking, like down over here. The Sensei
Yep.
is basically the AI that can help me go through and answer questions.
Yep.
So, oh, then the Ninja. Perfect. Awesome, Jeff. Am I missing? So in terms of like, right. So I'm going to include a link in the video in terms of if anybody out there wants to basically try out Ninja CPA Review. You have a 7-day free trial, correct?
Yeah, 7-day free trial. No credit card required. Just we ask that you give us an actual email, not like, because what happens is our system is like, oh, this is a bad email. We're not gonna send, just give all the spam laws,
Yeah.
um, and so it'll bounce and you'll never get your login. So
Cool. So, I mean, is there anything I haven't asked, or is there anything else that I can learn more about Ninja, or like, and obviously, like I've had, and I don't know if I mentioned this, but I really wanted to meet with you just because I had a student who used Ninja and successfully passed, just only using Ninja, basically successfully passed the CPA exam, and now I can kind of understand why. But is there anything I didn't ask, or anything else that I'm missing about the course? Or you also up here, so you have like study groups where students can get together, or what else do you have? Like what other?
yeah, study group. Yeah, people can ask questions. We have a private Facebook group,
Okay.
um, and yeah, I think we're pretty. I mean, yeah, people can do the free trial. We are not for everyone. Like we're not as polished as some of the other courses, and I'm pretty laid back in the audio. I'm sure I annoy some people.
No, it's no, you never, I mean, honestly, it's everybody has like their own preference, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's really a matter of like, actually, a lot of my students tell me like, oh yeah, Bennett, I put you on ×2 speed. And I'm like, I've got to sound like Alvin from Alvin and the Chipmunks. I mean, I got to sound like, really? But yeah, no, I think everybody, and that's really what I always will tell students. It's like, you need to go through and try out New World, you need to try out Becker, you need to try out Ninja, Surgeon Climb. You want to go through and try out the different review courses because it's really going to be what's best for your learning style. But I think though, the one thing I always tell students though, and actually I'm using this analogy more now, although it's oftentimes used for something else, but the CPA exam is the wall and the wall does not forgive. And if you go into that exam not having prepared fully, and that means not using your courses that you're taking at the undergraduate or graduate level to prepare, you have to take a review course. And it's without a doubt because of how broad the material is and the way we teach things academically may not be the same way that the CPA exam goes through and tests those types of questions. So I don't know. Anything else?
I don't think so. I've enjoyed
Cool.
I've enjoyed our conversation. So
No,
thank
Jeff,
you.
this has been awesome, man. I can't believe another 71, and I'm glad you're past that. So we're going to say goodbye to everybody, and we will see all of you soon. And please feel free to click on the link below to the to how to get that free trial.